Good morning, everyone. And I'm just so excited about being able to share some of the things that we've been doing with all of you today. Just your work at this moment in time is just so important and so brave, and kind of a perfect moment to introduce the study guide to a book that we're calling Brave Journeys by 15 young people, ages 14 to 17, who crossed the border by themselves. And you'll see in the course of this morning a little bit about who these young people are and their stories. But as I think back on 12 days from now and 25 years ago is the anniversary of a single dare that I made to a small group of people, including teachers, that to begin to tell their story so that a stranger reader could care, and to think about any page one moment. And over the years, as our organization grew, giving voice to people who hadn't always been heard. And as we had more and more young people work with us, I think the most moving thing that happened was when we began to work with newcomer students, and by now hundreds every year. And so when COVID struck, we realized that we needed something very particular that could sort of wake people up over the Zoom screen, and a very particular way of sharing these stories with what we call this imaginary page one moment. So now I'll leave it up to the people who are implementing this really exciting project to tell you a little bit about it.
Okay, next slide. I'm Suzanne Marcus, and I'm humbled to be here with all of you. Just go back one to the agenda. We are giving a very brief, we have limited time, and we want to give you as much as possible. This is the most amazing book that Erica just spoke about, 15 stories told in the voices of our students right here in Long Island. Page one moment refers to a very specific technique of writing that's not typically taught in high schools or secondary schools or colleges, and that's unique to the Herstory methodology, which we're not going to get into right now. But you are going to hear from students and educators by going through and hearing one of the stories, and we'll go through one of the activities that are included in the new teacher guide so that we can experience it for ourselves. And then we'll talk about how we can adapt these resources to meet the needs of all students. Because right now, as skilled as we might be, I have some 30 years, I'm the senior here in this group of being an ENL teacher for 30 plus years. And yes, I'm old, but one thing I'll tell you is this year in the pandemic, I'm a first year teacher. We are all first year teachers in the pandemic. So with that, if we go to the next slide, something very exciting, we're going to just jump right in, and we're going to look at story 13. If you look at story 13, the title is When the Heart and Mind Don't Agree. And by the way, these stories are available in this book in English and Spanish. So we're going to click on the link, and you're going to hear it read. You can see the visual of it in a PDF. And as we finish reading, we're going to just think about something that we ask as a pre-reading activity in the guide. And that is, do you think that your heart, your emotions, and your mind, thoughts always work well together? Do our hearts and our minds always want the same things? So let's go right to the story.
When the heart and the mind don't agree. While playing with friends outside my grandmother's house, my aunt arrived. "It's your mother," she said, handing me the cell phone. In slow motion, I heard when my mom told me that in 2 days, I'll be traveling to the United States. I was shocked by the news. I didn't know what to say or think. I only stayed still with my mind blank. Tell your dad, my mom said. When I was done talking to her, 1,000 thoughts came to mind. I tried to separate my emotions, but it wasn't possible. I was very hopeful about seeing the woman who gave me birth, my mother, since I hadn't seen her since I was 3. It wasn't a decision I had to make, since weeks before, many problems with delinquency had occurred and were getting worse. I tried to convince myself that everything would be fine, but the more I tried, the less my heart accepted it. I had to say goodbye to everything that made up my world. How do you leave the most important person from one day to the next? My dad, who took care of me for 14 years, wasn't just my dad anymore. He was also my mother, my friend. He had become the most important person in my life, and I didn't want to leave him alone. But I had no choice. The day of the departure came too quickly. My dad, brother, who also was coming with me on this trip, and I arrived at the hotel. We were both torn up inside. We didn't want to leave our country, much less our father. When it was time for our dad to leave us there, I could see the sadness in his face. Take care of yourself, he said as he hugged us. He left the room and I tried to distract myself with the television, but I couldn't stop thinking in all I was leaving behind in my country. There's a saying that goes, you can't take a man out of his country, but you can't take a country from a man's heart. That's what's happening to me, along with thousands of other immigrants who left their countries in search of a better life. That's how I came to say goodbye to great parts of my life. The day I left my country, I realized our souls are made of glass. As I looked at my country's streets one last time, I could hear inside how my soul and heart shattered to pieces.
And you're muted, Suzanne. Suzanne, you're muted.
Sorry, no matter how many times I hear the story, and I muted myself because I knew I'd be sobbing again. Ridiculous. Okay, anyway, it's powerful. And let's go back to the question. We're going to put up a Jamboard and ask you 2 questions on 2 pages. What did the story evoke in your heart? And the second question, what changes did you notice, if any, in your body? We work this way to get students because there's a visceral response. So your response on the Jamboard, if Madison, you can put it up now, is both in response to this story written by a beautiful young person, or to anything in response to this question that makes you think of a former student, your own journey, your own work in this pandemic, whatever. But this story evokes different things and we make a personal connection to it.
Madison, if you can add the link to the
Jamboard in the chat, yeah.
And when you share, just make sure that it's available to all, please.
Thank you. Just take a moment to either put it in a text box or a little post-it note here. Hopefully this is going to work. It should be shared with everyone.
But in the meantime, just reflect. Sit on that perch.
Okay, Mariola has a beautiful comment here. We can get that on the Padlet. That would be beautiful. Thank you. Myself, many years ago, made me look outside the window at the sky, memories of my own journey. Hopefully you can get it from the chat box now to go right to the Padlet and put those up in any color post-it you want. There it is. Yep. These come up anonymous, so don't worry. Just
Yes.
share away.
And remember, the first board is the first question, and then just please hit the arrow at the top to go to your second. Yep. Thank you, Madison.
Wow.
I should say this was also written in Spanish, reading about the language insecurity. And it's the language of the students' hopes and dreams, which really made a difference.
I love the comment. I wish teachers could hear this story and in the student voice to make it even more powerful. Love it. And this talks to that, the fact that student voice is critical.
And one thing we know, we're preaching to the choir at most of our LITI conversations and NISABE events and NISTISO events. The fact is, in blueprint #1 of New York State English language learner success, every teacher, principle #1, every teacher is a teacher of ELs. And so we are finding that now more than ever, we need to get these voices out. Every one of our English language learners in Long Island and across the state and the US has a story. This is a way to have them read one another's stories. And this is so powerful. Look at all these Post-it notes coming. Reminded me of my first student and how hard she had it. Made me feel sad because they're leaving everything. Makes me also feel hopeful. They're not just your students. They're not just ELL students. So we could go on and on. We're all preaching to the choir. If we go to the next frame, this is what evoked in our hearts. But as someone who also works with students who've experienced trauma, I want to share with you how visceral memories are, how they're stored in our brain and the nervous system. So is it wrong to say I felt a sense of calm? No, because what overcomes many students and readers and listeners after they hear the Brave Journey story is a sense of calm. When you get it out, there's a release, okay? And someone else's physical response to physically shrink down in sadness, to hold your breath, to feel your heart racing. These are the responses that we talk about. And these stories clearly have the power to change the hearts and minds of others. And after that, to create and change policy to make it better. So with that, we're going to go on and you're going to hear the impact what amazing teachers and students in Westbury have had with this resource. Maria?
Thank you, Suzanne, and thank you, each of you. This is a moment when we hear these stories, we become vulnerable. Not only our children, but we as educators become very vulnerable. So thank you for sharing your vulnerability with us in this safe space. Westbury has been extremely fortunate to have partnered and experienced the Herstory opportunity since 2017. We started our journey as an after-school program, taking our children, our young learners, our high school students over to LIU Post so that our children would have an experience this in a college setting alongside college students. Imagine the power of that. Imagine how they envision themselves as part of a university. And so that was an amazing experience. We were very fortunate to have Miss Maria Jose Vaca as our teacher leader. You will be hearing her voice in a little bit. Actually, I believe she is on the as a participant today. She and our students engaged in that one-page moment. And through their experiences, their stories evolved. Every year we had a culminating session where our students shared their stories. talk about courage, talk about perseverance and grit. So it also taught them how to not only share their stories, but also presentation skills, presentation to an audience, to their teachers, to their school counselors, to the superintendent of schools, to a whole array, their own teachers, their principal, a whole array of audience members. And then last year, we were engaging into expanding it into the classroom because it was only a select few students that engaged in this process. So we wanted to expand it. And what better way of doing it is bringing it into the classroom and partnering up with the teachers so their pedagogy can also be expanded on and impacted. So fortunately, as we know, our world turned upside down and we had COVID, but that did not stop us. Why? Because we persevere and we find alternative ways of ensuring that our children have access. So in partnering again with Helen Alessi, who is our coach, we came into the classrooms virtually with Helen and our children, and with Maria Vaca. It wasn't as expansive as we wanted it, but we wanted to start it. So that was our phase 2. And our phase 3, we are about to embark in a full-fledged 4 classrooms, impacting a lot of children. But enough hearing about my voice. I would like to share a moment with Ms. Vaca's voice. She did speak, she's a very passionate educator, and she spoke for almost 5 minutes. So we're going to shorten it a little bit. So I leave you in the hands of Ms. Vaca.
Hi, my name is Maria Jose Vaca, and I have been a teacher's core for the past 4 years for this amazing program of Herstory. I am so happy that Westbury decided to use this program to better support our students. I know that through this program, I've learned that our students are brave and courageous, and this has allowed them to build their self-esteem, to open up their hearts, to share with us their stories. It could be, their one-page moments where they share their happiness, the struggles, their traumas. And I feel that it has taught me to open myself up to them as well as they have opened themselves to us, to the school, in PDs, in different situations. And I feel that having these programs only helps to build relationships, to build culture within a building, in classrooms. I think that allowing the students to use the native language, Haitian Creole, Spanish, Spanglish, English, whatever, it helps them write and it helps them build the literacy, but also allows them to really share their feelings and how they feel. They use the right words to make us feel what they feel, to make us go through their experiences and hopefully change people's hearts and minds that, sometimes we as teachers don't really have the chance to see our students as humans. I know that this has improved my practice immensely because to begin, when I just started, I feel like all I wanted was to, teach to the test, as embarrassed I am saying that.
Thank you, Madison. That was a little bit of her experience. I wanted you to listen to the voice of an educator. Her practice has changed and has evolved immensely. And providing that opportunity for her students to have a voice has allowed her to really cultivate strong relationships with her children. But the whole idea behind this is empowering children, is empowering students, empowering their voices and having their voices heard, to ensure that they are secure enough to impact change. So, and in the Jamboard, I saw powerful words such as empathy, such as calmness. Please take a moment to listen from one of our students, Brenda Errazo. She is currently a I believe a junior in our school, in our Westbury High School, and she's going to talk about her experience through the Herstory opportunity.
Hi, my name is Brenda, and I am a senior at Westbury High School. I will be sharing
Senior.
today about my experience at Herstory. The impact that Herstory Writers Workshop had on me was that I was able to express myself without being looked down or judged. This experience built my self-esteem and my language development. Herstory helped me overcome the challenges that I faced in my journey by helping me be the person who I am today and understanding that life is suffrage and we can do so much from it. This has definitely made me have a different perspective of the world and others because it taught me so much from everyone around me and how everyone has a story to tell.
So that's Brenda, and sorry, she is a senior. I just forget because I keep seeing these children grow. No, you were correct, Madison. Go right into the culminating. This is a sample of a culminating presentation on the campus of LIU Post. These are two of our students plus their partner of an LIU college student.
My name is Anna Estrada. I'm a freshman at Westbury High School. Okay. My heart races as I stand here in front of you. Touching this topic with family and friends is something I avoid doing, and you probably wonder why. After so many years, I finally open up about it. You might not define who I am, but you do make up many struggles in my life. These are words I wish I can someday say to my father since he has been absent in my life for so long. I find it harder to speak about my father now that I'm older because I'm no longer the child he left 12 years ago. I'm not the kid who was eager for a call from Dad on her birthday, the one who waited her entire elementary school years for her father to arrive at her doors and fill her with love and affection that was long lost after so many years. It was easy then because I didn't realize that the calls from Dad on my birthdays were never going to happen, and he surely was never coming back to meet me at my door for some hugs and kisses. As I
Hi, I'm Mandy. I'm a junior at Westbury High School. All right. Before I say anything, just know it wasn't always like this. He used to smile so wide that the next town over would feel its mighty presence and be comforted in its embrace. His face a staple of Haitian pride. Bon bagay, his motto meaning good things because everything was. Everyone knew him, everyone loved him, he loved them back. Everyone knew his name, but now nothing's the same, but I swear it wasn't always like this.
Hi, I'm Paola Guzman, and I'm a sophomore at LIU Post. So much. My mother is a woman of few words, no metaphors comparing me to the light or the stars, but when she says things like, I love you, she has a way of saying much more than that. This story is for my mother, for every Hispanic mother living in the United States, for all the single mothers, for every child of immigrant parents who have to grow up a bit too fast, that have to understand the world differently, that have to hear things like, we can't talk to you, you're a minor, tell your mom to learn English, or feel awkward when a teacher asks, can we speak to your parents? Because you know they won't understand. My mother and I are warriors.
Thank you, Madison. And thank you to Madison for putting that collage together for us. Power. This is, so can I just from on the chat, if you can just give me some, again, the connection between your heart and your mind. Can you give me some power words that these experiences, either from the educator, from Ms. Vaca, or the 4 students that you saw, what did it evoke between your heart and your mind? If you can just add it on the chat. Fearless, brave, strength. Actually, a lot stronger than I think I could be. They taught me. Our children have been teaching me for the 24 years that I've been in education. I've had the honor of being an educator. Empowering, yes. And my question is, when you say empowering, who is being empowered? Who's impressing who? Who's demonstrating courage? Her story empowered the students to be able to express and acknowledge their own pain and disappointments from their childhood. Thank you so very much again for being vulnerable. Let me just give you a couple of the whys, which turned into hows, which then equaled into our whats. So developing confidence and self-esteem, developing public speaking skills, developing a deep sense of maturity. Ms. Vaca can attest to, we can all attest to, even the other teachers that support our children can attest to the maturity level of our children from the beginning of the opportunity to the end of their experience, which it didn't end. Their writing continued to evolve. Addressing the 5 domains of social emotional learning, developing a sense of deep empathy, making connections not only teacher to student, which is critical, student to teacher, which is critical, in a school setting, critical, but also connecting to scholars that were at a different level than they were. They were high school students that now were with college students. Now think of the impact in a classroom. So that is our story here in Westbury. Madison, if you could just go one more slide, if you don't mind. And it's the power of the written word as a result of brave journeys. Herstory has published, is partnered with Long Island Winds. We have a couple of our students that are published authors, and their stories can be found right here on Long Island Winds. And I believe, Suzanne, you will take us through that?
Erica, go ahead.
Erica, sorry. Thank you.
Yeah, so I'm still sort of just shaking from, even though I've heard these stories so many times. I mean, they enter your heart. And also it's just so hard for us to believe, but also sometimes for other students reading these stories. They keep saying, wait, were they really just students like me? So what does it mean to make the student voices, the canon, the literary things that we study, whether we're teaching to a test? And also, I just wanted to say a few words about the experience of publication for the students. And the 15 students who were published in this book are so, so proud. We published the stories at first anonymously, but at this point, the young people are beginning to claim their stories by their names. You'll find in the study guide a beautiful part where the students are talking about what it's like to claim their own names and faces now that it's less dangerous. So this is a beautiful story. And Madison, as I'm talking, we'll just scroll down a little from Westbury High School. And for the schools that are participating and partnering with Herstory, this opportunity, we have a whole tab that Madison will show us. But first, just click on the flag for a minute to show that every single story, and now we have probably 3-4 years of archives of student stories, is both in Spanish and English. So don't worry, actually, it's not so important. So as you see, as Madison continues to scroll down, students writing about the pandemic, students writing about not graduating, students writing just a lot of things. And the opportunity, this is another book that we just have in Spanish that we're using. And, you know, anyway, I don't want to go on for time, but the only other thing to say about this website is when the students have published their stories anonymously, each of them has the opportunity to confer with an artist and say, what would you like the image? And so the Westbury student liked the idea of a table, you know, and it's just so empowering, you know, that to the students, like, just to know I'm published, my stories are going to make an impact. And you can also just with the Hope story, you'll notice, I think there are over 1,000 opens. So imagine that. Anyway, you see 1,544 opens. And sometimes in our classes, we'll ask people to write to the student writers. So I don't want to go on too long.
So to keep everything in, let's go to the next slide. And there's two questions, because many of us in K-12 often have books from Common Core and curriculum guides and teacher editions and publishers. And now we have next generation. It's basically plus ça change, plus c'est la même chose. Okay, so the key is thinking about these authors, these young writers. In what ways are they different than writers we typically offer our students in ELA classes, or even sometimes in ENL classes? And the question is for us to think, what's different and how might these stories impact your practice? So there's a picture here of a waterfall. That's a beautiful, calming thing for us. But what we're going to do is try something that many of you are already doing if you're Zooming teaching. And that is, instead of everyone going to the chat right away, we're going to go to the chat, but we're not going to hit enter. Think about these questions. Think about how these writers would resonate with different students. How are these different than other readings you've had your students do? And how might these stories impact your practice? Like, what can you do tomorrow to bring this home into your classroom pedagogy? And put it in the chat now, but let's wait a few seconds to not hit enter right away. Let's think, because when we hit enter right away, we're trying to read people's response and write at the same time. And that's hard to do. So let's just answer these questions. In what ways are these writers different? And how might these stories impact your practice? Whatever comes to mind. If you've done stories before with students, what do you think could be different in your students hearing these students' voices and stories? And when you're ready, we'll give 10 more seconds. Then you're going to hit enter, and basically the chat's going to look like a waterfall. And then we get to share by reading everything instead of writing, because it's good to identify just one modality, just like our students. Let's have them write before they're reading other people's answers and thinking they're going to be judged. Ready? So if you have the answers to these two questions, in what ways are these young writers, these authors, these published authors, these voices different than other things they've read? Think about your classic books that some of them are being asked to read in high school, like To Kill a Mockingbird and Catcher in the Rye. Okay, I won't go further. How might these stories impact your pedagogy in your classroom? Ready, set, click, enter. Woo, look at the waterfall. Look at the waterfall. Go, go, go. Okay, so yes, students can relate to the stories. They're familiar concept. They obviously, yes, they do. Thank you, Shauna. They address all socio-emotional learning. They can relate. They're different countries. They encourage students to share their own stories. They're different because the writers are youths themselves. They're similar to our students, very different from authors. They're authentic. That's exactly right. That's what we're looking for. I've had students say to me, Miss, she sounds like me. She's just like me. Where is she? And what happens is you allow students, because we're now doing this remotely, kids are connecting with other kids in a neighboring district they may never get to know, because they can form relationships. And when they see that a voice like theirs is powerful enough to have the written word printed in a bound journal, in a book, there's nothing more powerful, because it means you matter. Your story matters, and you can teach all of us. Okay, so that's what's so important. And anything else, please feel free. We clearly can go on for days about this, so we have to be quiet. I'm going to give the next slide, which is a former student of mine, to Maria, because it really speaks to this issue of being seen, being acknowledged, being heard. And yes, I believe, as many of you, because we're talking to each other here, everybody needs to hear this story loud and clear on CNN minimally. Okay.
And Suzanne, thank you. Thank you for sharing this quote from one of your students. So this is Carla from 8th grade. When she was in 8th grade, Suzanne, where is she now?
Now she's a social worker and the proud mama of 3 children, and she lives in Texas, and she just got power back a few weeks ago. I'm still in touch with her. As we heard from this morning from Dorina, who's still in touch with her students, and this is clearly about relationships being at the heart.
And talk about the power of words. So this young lady came to Miss Marcus and said, I can't learn from someone I don't know. And most of you, when we saw the waterfall, when we and we've done the activities that we've engaged in during our session, this is powerful. I can't learn from someone I don't know. So please, if you're sitting in if you're in a classroom, I was going to say tomorrow when you go back to your classrooms, different environment that we are in today. But when you go back into your classroom or right now, as you think about the children that may be sitting in front of you, if some are in person, if they're the ones that are sitting here in this type of scenario, sitting in your virtual classroom, think about, how much do I know about Maria Angelica? How can I reach her? How can I go in and reach her really from the heart? Do I have the tools to do that? That's a perch question. So take a moment, perch. I wrote a lot of notes down with Dorina this morning, so I'm going to be using, I'm taking a quote, know our children's story. Critical. So this definitely, Suzanne, I appreciate so much that you shared this with us, because this really connects to our why.
Right. And Carla, little did she know, years ago, was ahead of her time without the research to back it up. So I will quote her, and she knows about it. Okay, so moving on, we want to share, we're getting some questions in the chat, and we know that we are ending and people need to go to lunch and watch those funny videos that Kelly and Cornelia put up. Thank you. What's next for us? What is next? So the study guide bundle, because we feel so compelled to share this with so many other people. And I just want to put a shout out to so many larger districts that Erica could attest to, who have used Herstory and Brave Journeys. And many of them are Long Beach, Hempstead, Westbury, Patch Medford. I want to Central Islip, right. I want to put the onus of responsibility on the smaller districts in Long Island with less than 10% ELLs who are not always getting what they need. I'm retired from Great Neck, I can say that. We need to look at, even if there's 1 student or 2 students, we really truly need these stories to be heard by everyone. This is not just about, those districts. It's not just about those districts under review. Long Island, every single district has a handful of English language learners. And this is not only for the English language learners, this is for the kids who monolingually only speak English. Okay, so we have a Brave Journeys teacher guide. And if you click here for the participants, we're going to put the link. Madison, can you put that link in the chat and go to this to show people, because teachers are interested. There's a whole list of resources. And what we will tell you is you have 3 of our emails here. Understand the way we chat We will go on if you email us. We will have a Zoom with you. We want to get the word out. These brave journeys are your students' brave journeys. And they can empower all of us. So take a look
Yes.
at the chat. Madison, I don't know if you want to actually go through the link, if we have time to show them that beautiful page that Madison created, because she is an amazing coordinator and a digital
Yes.
native and a digital native. So she could just do this.
So it's just, oh, go ahead, Madison.
Yeah, well, this is our landing page, but you should be able to join. It'll say enroll for free right here. You should be able to click that. And then it'll take you into this course, and this will give you all the resources that we had listed on that slide, just like a little taste test.
And from this, you may not get the actual methodology of Herstory for what is a page one moment, what is meeting the stranger reader, but the study guide project walks you through. There are pre and post activities. It's connected to certain essential questions. And we do have evidence, and we'll maybe in the future put together the evidence of how students' actual for language skills will improve to do better than they have been doing on the assessments that we still have to answer to in the future, meaning the ELA, the Regents exams, and so on. So here you have some of the activities. They vary very much.
And we, Westbury, we do have the data with the students that have been engaged. So we want to make sure that there's a maximum impact. This is an amazing resource, ladies and gentlemen, for you to kind of get a taste test, as Madison stated. Please know, I'm going to reiterate what Suzanne mentioned. We are available to you. Please reach out to us via email. It is all in the presentation. And like Madison just showed you, there's also a page with all the resources that we used here.
Yeah, and please also feel free to contact Herstory. We work in different districts in different ways, and whether you're interested in using the study guide and creating something in the classroom or in something in the after-school program, we would love to hear from you. And we'd also love to offer you the opportunity to use the Teacher's Corner part of the study guide to actually write your own responses. Please tell us your experiences. If you use the free bundle, feel free to share all those stories with your students. It's our dream that this study guide and book will be in every single classroom in this whole country. So.
Thank you all. Heather